Hello, my friends. Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. I am here solo today, as I have mentioned a few times that I have been intending to do more solo episodes. So I'm excited to start doing them more in the new year. As a busy mom, and business owner and partner. I just haven't gotten around to it. And I think part of me has been resistant to just chatting and sharing my stream of consciousness a little more, but not anymore. I'm ready to just ramble for whoever needs to listen in and wants to join me in my own reflections on my evolution, what I'm observing collectively, how my business is shifting and evolving alongside of me, how my spiritual health is shifting, what changes I've made, how it's impacting me, and all of that stuff. So, yeah, you can just buckle up, bear with me because it is always an interesting journey just chatting with yourself. It's certainly a shift in dynamic from interviewing someone. So, I have my little notes here. I have quite the episode for you all talking about the past year, 2025, year of the snake, what I've been shedding, and how I'm looking forward to the year ahead. And so, yeah, let's dive in. So, for starters, this year, I know it seemed really heavy for a lot of people. I think the year the snake energy was very prominent. I noticed it in clients, I noticed it at my circles, I noticed it in myself that it felt like we were all moving through our very own different versions of heavy, dense energy. And it does for me along the way. I've learned to kind of embrace those seasons because I've recognized that on the other side of them is always so much expansion. And so they don't quite scare me as much anymore. They almost excite me in some weird way where I'm like, yes, I'm gonna feel so cleansed on the other side of this emotional detox, if that makes sense. But so, yeah. So if you've been feeling like you're in the trenches for 2025, A, pretty sure it's astrologically on point, and B, same. So join the club. But yeah, this past year has been really beautiful in a lot of ways. So much to be grateful for. I have been loving watching Arthur grow. I've been loving the life that John and I are building, working on our house, and just creating the life that we want. We're very in alignment with how we see the world, how we want to raise Arthur, what our priorities are. And I think that has been really special. And then in my own past few months, I would say, have been a little dense. I feel now I'm finally coming out the other side and feeling super inspired. But I shared on Instagram a few months ago that I decided to eliminate cannabis completely. And I also took out coffee as well, which no judgment at all. I know that most of you are like, you will not pry my coffee out of my cold, dead hands, and that is totally fine. Not here to judge. But one thing I did realize is that for me, just I really realized when I stopped drinking, slowly over time that I have a more sensitive system. I'm a more sensitive person in general. And that doesn't just mean emotionally, it also means physically. And the longer I've had alcohol eliminated from my life, I feel the more attuned I've become to my physical body and what works for me and what doesn't work for me, and just very much so feeling when things are out of alignment. physically, energetically. And so I shared, I never was really someone who weed was never really my problem or my thing. And I didn't embark on my sobriety from alcohol as a traditional sobriety journey. I started with alcohol and I kind of was just taking an experiment that has gone on now for nearly 6 years. In 2026, it'll be 6 years. And so I didn't do a 12-step program or anything like that where it's more kind of common to cut out everything, meaning drugs and alcohol. So I never really told myself I'm not smoking weed because it was an issue. Early on in my alcohol-free journey, I did cut out weed though, kind of out of principle, like let me just see how I feel without anything. So there was a large part of my sobriety from alcohol where I did not smoke weed at all. It's kind of ironic. I'm wearing a Fine Fettle dispensary sweatshirt right now, which is kind of funny. But I at somewhere so needless to say, lots of full sobriety in my years of being sober from alcohol, and I always loved it, felt my best without anything, but never really felt like cannabis was much of an issue anyways. But then after I had Arthur, I really struggled with insomnia and just being able to fall asleep, really, and stay asleep. And I started giving myself permission to smoke weed. And then over the past 6 months to a year before I cut it out, like earlier in the fall, I was like, I felt that feeling again, just that there's an up leveling happening within me, energetic shifts, further awakening that was just nudging me towards, clarity and really leaning into being a clear vessel. I don't know how to explain it any other way than that. And I always say, I never know what comes first, like the spiritual awakening, or you remove the substances and you kind of spiritually expand, regardless, chicken or the egg, whatever. I felt the nudge and I decided to cut out cannabis and coffee. I had felt like I was sort of in a cycle of using cannabis to sleep and then waking up and drinking coffee. And just coffee doesn't, I don't, A, am not the best with moderation, clearly. And B, I just noticed it had me feeling outside of my natural energy in a way I did not like. And I knew it for a long time. And I've also cut out coffee for extended periods of time too. So, and knew I really liked how I felt just clear, grounded. And so something just was, that nudge, the nudge I talk about a lot. And so I cut it out earlier in the fall, but it's been a few months now. And I have to say, like, I feel so intuitively on point and connected to my inner wisdom, connected to my version of God, which I will definitely speak more on later in this episode. I feel so connected to my path, to this feeling of flow in my life. I feel when I get in alignment with the things I know I need to be doing for my physical, mental, and emotional self, there is an element of surrender that I just cannot explain other than getting in alignment and letting go of the rest, and your life unfolds. I feel just it was the very clear shift I needed to make. And there's absolutely, as I always say, no judgment. We all have different paths. We all have different areas of exploration and the low-hanging fruit that we need to release, right? And so for you, it can be something totally different. And I'm also going to talk about why that's relevant to how my coaching is shifting as well. But that said, it was really hard at first. The few, like, couple weeks, I really had a hard time sleeping. I felt super emotional, and I realized that even though I was minimally using cannabis and I felt that it was helping me sleep, it was still this low grade escape from myself and numbing. And even doing that, I still felt that there was unprocessed emotions that came up. I think I was grieved. Like it was another like layer of just grief or processing that I needed to get through apparently. But anyways, I feel much lighter now. And so in my purpose, so in my integrity, so creatively inspired with my message. Another thing I did to call my energy back in this past year, I felt like I kind of told myself I'm challenging myself to post every day. And honestly, I just recycled a lot of content from TikTok. But I started feeling very scattered, very like my message wasn't clear. It was kind of all over the place. And even looking back, I'm not like ashamed of what I posted from the past year. I'm very proud of myself for being consistent and challenging myself. But this next season for me is just all about reeling my energy back in and chasing fucking nothing. Okay, chasing fucking nothing and just being super intentional. I think I spent some time trying to think about what would gain the most traction over who am I and how do I want to share my message. And personally, for me, I like long form content. I like writing to exhaust my caption count. I've been doing that since before AI, and everyone has all these lengthy captions now. And I'm like, oh, now it's like everyone's going to think that everything is AI. But if you scroll back to 2019, I've been exhausting my character count since then. And I plan to continue to do so through my own authentic voice and writing. And just really being who I feel called to be in alignment with myself. And I think that's the thing about being out of alignment is we can succumb to a sense of urgency more. Because when we are in alignment, there's a level of surrender, just knowing we're doing everything that we can. And from there, we can just let things flow. But when we're not in alignment, I notice that often coincides so much more with grasping and clinging and reaching. And so ultimately, that kind of ties into how my coaching is shifting, sobriety as a broader lens, how my awakening process has been changing, how my relationship with God is shifting. And so I guess I'll start a little bit with my coaching and sobriety as a broader lens, but I've really been leaning into this idea of sensitivity as the portal into my work as opposed to sober curiosity, because sober curiosity was the tool I used to expand my superpower of sensitivity to empower it. But that's not everyone's obstacle. So rather than sobriety or sober curiosity being the like portal to my work, I want it to be sensitivity. So these are minor shifts to other people, but to me, it's meaningful that I recognize, there's so many of us who are highly sensitive, who are highly perceptive, who are very intuitive, and we've just been gaslit by the world because much of our conditioning and programming doesn't empower sensitivity because why would it? Why would they, whoever they is, want us to be tuned in, curious, asking questions, attuned to the frequency of ourselves and others, empowered with our nearly psychic ability? And that's something that's really been expanding for me as I've really stepped away from all things that alter my energy is holy shit, you guys, my intuition and the synchronicities in my life, they were already strong with alcohol being gone, but now I'm just so excited to see how that area of me continues to expand over the year and years to come, and I'll definitely continue to share there. But yeah, I've really been drawn to this idea of working more so with just sensitive people in general and using sober curiosity as one tool amongst like all my other expertise in nervous system regulation and holistic health and doing the inner work to empower our sensitivity because not every sensitive person numbs out with alcohol, but maybe they numb out with weed or scrolling or dimming themselves down to please others. Because I find with us being really perceptive or sensitive, if you identify as someone who's highly sensitive, I think that energy can make other people uncomfortable because they can sense that we see past the bullshit and the masks. And before we understand that about ourselves, we can get gaslit really easily. You're too sensitive, or it was just a joke, or, you kind of attract people that make you question the areas of you that you need to strengthen. I feel that's part of our human ecosystem, that we attract people that highlight our wounds or the areas of us that we need to actually embrace and empower. So, anyways, my coaching has been shifting to talk a lot more about being deep feelers, being highly sensitive people, being really perceptive, and how we can stop dimming down with alcohol and beyond in any way. And the creatives, I love integrating the creative folks amongst us. I think many of us have intersections with being deeply feeling, being highly sensitive, and having a deep craving to creatively express ourselves because we see the world in a really interesting and fascinating way. And it's really therapeutic and healing for ourselves and the world to share our perspective and perception. And I believe that it's a healing medicine the world needs, that divine feminine energy that exists within us all, men and women, that that sensitive nature, that nurturing, intuitive, psychically inclined, energetically sensitive nature that needs to be empowered within all of us in systems that really try to dilute it in very intense ways. And so that's how, too, when I mentioned my take on sobriety is expanding, is I think of, even with sober curiosity, I'm really looking at it as this exploration of not just alcohol. It's an exploration of anything that numbs us, anything we're addicted to that's distracting us from embracing our introspection, embracing what sets us apart, embracing the qualities of sensitivity within us that we are unable to feel deeply and to that we feel as a weakness when in reality it is truly a strength that we need you all shining, like all the sensitive people with all the nuanced thought, the people who don't succumb to groupthink, the people that are out here really thinking for themselves because they have a different way of seeing the world that may be a little less black and white. Those are the voices I truly believe we need more of, not less. And so empowering those people to step into their power and their brilliance and their radiance and their insightfulness is something I'm super excited about. Using sober curiosity as a piece, not the whole puzzle. And so, yes, beyond that, talking about how my own awakening process is changing, my own relationship with God. I guess my own relationship with God hasn't changed much. I am not here to announce any major shifts other than I'm still someone who believes in a greater power beyond what we can see, a divine intelligence that connects us all. And I truly feel, though, that I feel so much more deeply connected to the God of my understanding by continuing to make choices to be in energetic alignment with myself. And there's this connection between, for me, alignment within, connection to God, of your understanding. I use universe, source, God, divine intelligence, Yahweh, Allah, goddess, whatever the fuck you want to say. I think it is all an eternal, loving presence that unites us all, that is within us all, and that we can plug into when we are in integrity with what we know we need to do and why this is connected so deeply to physical health, emotional health, mental health. Because when we have obstacles in any area of our health and well-being, in our mindset, in our relationships that are bringing, darkness to our lives, in the substances we're choosing to ingest, in the quantities we're choosing to ingest them, that brings darkness to us, anything that disconnects us from that light and obstructs that. So for me, I've noticed that I feel so much more connected to that light, that source energy, that divine intelligence, that creative expression that flows through each of us when we are in our authentic state, just as close to our natural essence as we can possibly be. And I'm not saying that means for every single person needs to be sober. You all know, I'm sure, if you listen to my podcast regularly and follow me, like I'm not a here prescribing one size fits all, just prescribing a curiosity about what do you think is inhibiting from you inhibiting you from connecting to divine intelligence as deeply as you could. And I think, in terms of that, relating to my own awakening process, I I went through a pretty big spiritual awakening in 2020 when I gave up alcohol and I really started to see, I guess you could say, the other side of the veil, beyond the veil of there's all these words we use, the matrix, programming, conditioning, but I don't really know what other words to use other than the systems and structures we've been told to believe are reality. I really start to question, the power structures. Who's really in charge here? Do they really have our best interests? Are these systems truly empowering us? And the layers of awakening that have been occurring for me as of recently was that, in the beginning, I would go down a lot of rabbit holes and feel like, oh my God, there's so much darkness, this and that, and trying to convince other people. Not, I wasn't out here really shoving it down anyone's throat, but I think I was very frustrated, even in my personal life, with people who were very much subscribing to the systems, being told what we're supposed to do during 2020 and beyond, and not questioning anything or seeing what to me seemed like evil in plain sight. But now, as I continue on my path and my own unfolding, I just feel as though, and I've talked about this from the beginning, it's not drastic changes, it just feels like more embodied and solidified on a foundational level within me, that you really just don't need to prove how awake you are. You just need to embody the light. You just need to channel the divine intelligence that flows through you from being in alignment with yourself and shine that fucking light. And that is the healing that we all need. That is your most powerful asset in shifting the frequency of the planet, awakening people around you, empowering people to step into their most vibrant selves. We don't all have to be out here as warriors advocating for, the corruption of the world. I think a lot of us just need to quietly embody our unique genius by being in alignment in mind, body, and spirit, not to like overuse the word alignment, but it's true. And so, yeah, just being the lighthouse, not the tugboat. And it's something I'm starting to deeply understand in my own path, and just really like releasing the wheel and letting the unfolding occur. And that's the beautiful thing about having faith in some type of higher power, divine intelligence, eternal loving presence. I don't see God as a personified being. I see it as an energy, a source energy from which we all came, nature, the, beautiful complexity of humans and nature, and everything was created by this ultimate source energy that is loving, that is of the light, and that when we can be connected to that, when we can enlist that energy in our lives, it is so much more powerful than trying to do everything on our own. And I don't mean just surrendering, giving my power away, and not trying. Of course, I take action in my own life. I think you all know that. Maybe too much action. That's the whole point here, is that it's allowed me to release some of that initiative or responsibility and have faith that when I'm in alignment with myself and my integrity and the things I know I truly need to be doing in my body, mind, heart, soul, that the unfolding from there can take place with much more ease. And that there's this eternal loving presence that I refer to as God myself is has our highest, most aligned possible timeline or lifetime in mind. There are, that is how we open our lives to miracles, to how the fuck did this even happen, to the unimaginable things maybe we would not even visualize for ourselves because it is so great or grand or beyond our wildest dreams. And so I want to open myself to that energy. Don't you? You know? And so that's where I find that surrender and flow really intersect for me with my own spiritual beliefs and doing what I know I need to do to take care of myself, to, take care of myself in mind, body, and spirit. And from there, the rest can be released to the unfolding of the universe, to God's plan, to faith. And that is where we can really hand our lives over in certain ways that bring about a lot of peace, in my opinion, and a lot of, you know, like I don't need to fucking post on Instagram every goddamn day, okay? I can post with intentionality. I can post whatever I want when I want, focus, ramble on my podcast. And what's meant for me isn't going anywhere. And I'm just aligning with the frequency that's going to call it all in. So that's where I've been at, really. We don't need to force other people awake. We just need to exist in our light. So, yeah. And I've been seeing a lot of the collective shedding, and I think it's been really beautiful. My last sister circle was earlier this month in December, and we all talked about what we're releasing as we head into the new year. And the year of the horse is all about momentum. It's all about unapologetic authenticity, being in your power. I mean, just think of a horse running. Like that gets me jazzed up, honestly, all the muscles and just like, yeah. And I'm feeling that. And I feel that the year of the snake really prepared us all to step into that energy, that empowered, liberated, free, sovereign, authentic energy. And I'm fucking ready, honey. I am fucking ready. I can't wait. The inspiration has been flowing ever since I gave myself permission to just step back and stop putting myself so much pressure on myself. You know, creative inspiration comes from just being, from living. And I've known that. And it's just old patterns die hard. We get sucked back into being hyper productive, being hyper independent, thinking we have to make everything happen in our lives on our own. And it's not the case. And there is an energy waiting for us to claim it and be like, no, I trust in the unfolding of my life. And so, yeah, it's kind of why no more awakening rabbit holes, just focusing on being an awakened soul, focusing on being a grounded source of community and healing and inspiration, because I do feel that it is really turbulent times. And I think the more fuckery that goes on the world stage, the more and more people are feeling destabilized as they are too sort of wakening up wakening up, awakening to the reality that things aren't exactly as we've been told. And while that happens, I don't want to be swept into the frenetic, chaotic energy of it all. I want to be a grounding light, ushering people to the other side of that, back to themselves, back to the impact that we can have, back to the things we can control, which is focusing on being in alignment, focusing on our community, focusing on where we have the most potent potential for impact. And that is what I want to be doing. I don't want to be going down the dark holes. I don't want to be thinking I need to frantically compete with AI. I don't want to be thinking I need to be moving with a sense of urgency. No, I'm in a collaborative state of mind. I know that we rise together. I know that people are going to be continuing to awaken at a rapid pace and that the world is it's the tower moment, baby. Like the tower card in tarots, all great transformation is preceded by upheaval. And I think the upheaval is happening now. And I'm grateful that I've chosen to ground myself through the choices I've made so I can be spiritually, mentally, and emotionally resilient for my family, for my clients, for my community, for anyone I come into contact with, I want to have healing energy that they can feel, even if it's a brief moment in a coffee shop, because I think that really translates on a bigger scale. So, yeah, authenticity over performance, ego death after ego death, just letting myself enjoy the life I'm created. I think we see so much online about the next like trending wellness viral idea, community, self-care. You need to do this, you need to do that. And what I want to remind you is that what you need to do has nothing at all with what's going viral on the internet. It has everything to do with where you're at in your own healing and awakening process. And maybe you need to seek more community right now. Maybe you need to have more alone time. Maybe you're breaking patterns of people pleasing and you need to say no more. Maybe you need to step away from the loudness of the world, and maybe you need to be forcing more connection, listening to your own discernment around where you're at in your healing, but also knowing that without integration, ingestion is anxiety inducing, and to just continue to be working on personal development without stepping back from it all and just enjoying your life and integrating what you're learning, that's just straight up overwhelming. And so life is meant to be lived. We're all a work in progress. Just honoring the different seasons of being human and, connecting with people beyond the labels that we like to compartmentalize everyone within. Soul to soul connection for me has been something I've just been really focusing on, loving the people in my life, having quality time with family, making a meaningful life. And while we're here, and like how many people can we positively impact while we're doing so? And for me, that's been playing more, being present, being loving, not trying to prove myself quite so much, not trying to force anything, trusting in the divine unfolding of my life, my connection to God, my connection to myself. And so, yeah, I think I got most of what I wanted to say out. And I would love to hear more about how your own relationship to faith and surrender, which I will say my personal spiritual beliefs are not defined by religion, and I think it's beautiful. Like a lot of people are finding paths back to Christianity, and because I see a lot of threads of beautiful wisdom throughout, and I also see that many of us on our spiritual or religious pursuits are really all finding, the same elements of peace and surrender and co-creation with God or your version of and connection to each other. And I think that's really what we're going to need to focus on in the years to come is getting back to our roots as humans, remembering our humanity, connecting to our spiritual essence as well with creation, creativity, self-expression, not getting so wrapped up in the algorithm or AI or keeping up with the rapid pacing of the world, or getting sucked into the dark holes of whoever they is, just loving each other, being present with each other in our lives, and just continuing to allow our healing to unfold. Yeah, I think that's about it. That's all I got for today. And I'd love if anyone had any feedback or questions or areas you want me to share more on, I would love to. I would particularly appreciate feedback on these solo episodes, what stood out to you, and I would be happy to elaborate more on these topics if you have questions in any specific areas. So we did it. 2025 is going to have been over by the time I post this. New year ahead, stepping into it myself with self-assuredness, intention, confidence, connection to myself, to God, to my loved ones, connection to my integrity, to my intuition, to expanding my psychic ability. And I mean psychic in the intuitive sense that we all have some level and can, to varying degrees, tune in with ourselves and each other, depending on how much we want to expand upon that area of ourselves. I plan to grow my spiritual health more, my connection to purpose, my connection to meaning in the coming year. And I just want to continue to commit to an expression of my genuine self. And that's about that. What's your intention for the coming year, and how do you hope to step more fully into your wholeness and your truest, most free self? Shedding, leaving behind resentment for any old lingering resentments that I had, leaving behind, I said in my last circle, an assumption that everyone is like thinking the worst. Why do we do that? I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just going to assume everyone loves me because even if they don't, why not? And yeah, I think that covers it. I love you all so much. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being here. As always, rate if you haven't rated an episode, I would love that. Make sure you're subscribed. And I have some fun episodes coming up. I'm talking to, yeah, I'll keep it a surprise. How about that? And I'm actually going to be on a podcast too. So in the new year. So, anyways, love to you all. I love you. Keep growing. You got this. You know the usual. Peace, homie.